Okay, so it looks like recording just started. So welcome everyone to the virtual Discovery Dinner. This was initially a physical event, and obviously with COVID and all, we figured it would be best to go virtual, and we're really excited. It's the first one. So thank you everyone for being on this tonight. Really exciting. I'm excited for all the amazing things that we're going to be learning. And so this is sort of what the agenda is for tonight. We have an hour, and so I will introduce the speakers, and then we have questions. And so the way the questions work, so the speakers already have the majority of the questions, but we also had some questions that came in through registration. And so I have each speaker question alternating with a registration question, and then we'll sort of just let the speakers decide, who wants to answer the registration questions. So I'll just throw it out there and feel free to answer it. And then we'll go over to we'll see if we have any chat questions after we go through all the questions. And then, so as this is going on, if you have any questions that pop up on your mind, just go ahead and leave it in the chat, and we will come to that at some point. And then we have some additional questions if we don't get any in chat. But like I said, we only have an hour, and so we're definitely going to try to get through each question as quickly and as great as we can. And then we've got some resources that we'd like to share with you guys, and then that's basically all. So about the questions for the speakers, each question is about 3 minutes. So we're hoping that we'll have about 3 minutes, or we'll give about 3 minutes for you to answer those questions. And so we've got Don Harkey with People Centric. Thank you so much, Don, for being on tonight. And then we've got Dr. Kelly Wood with Missouri State University. And we've got Randy Will with RG Will Solutions. So thanks, Randy, for being on. And we've got Sarah Coatney with Guarantee Bank. And also we've got Robin Horton with the Ozarks Regional YMCA. So thank you guys for being on, and we're gonna go on to the questions. And so we've got 3 minutes for each question, and then, and so we'll go to our first question, which is for you, Don. And the question says, what constitutes a great workplace culture, and should this matter to job seekers in their decision to work for an organization?
Yeah, I love that question. When you think about culture, we think of like soft things. Like we think of ping pong tables and potluck suppers and open offices and basketball goals and things like that. I like to think of culture more as like the habits that an organization has. Every organization has a culture. It's whether it has a healthy culture. And to me, a healthy culture has two different things in it. One is that the people are empowered to do what they need to be able to do. So they feel empowered. Now, a lot of times when we think about empowerment, we think of something that we give to our workers. Like, I empower you to make the decisions you need to make. I think that a really strong culture actually takes it to the next level and recognizes that empowerment is something that we take as individuals. Like, it's not something that's given to you by somebody else. It's something that you take as an individual. So a place where you can come in and you can explore your own potential, I think is a really, really healthy culture. The second part to that, though, is because you can't be an organization where people just show up and all explore their own potential because the organization probably needs to make money or accomplish a mission or something, is around alignment. And that's the second piece. So there's empowerment and alignment. And the alignment is the thing that keeps the team together. It's the part that, this is what we're all here for. This is what we're all trying to accomplish. When somebody starts to feel like they're out of alignment, they feel like they're not part of the culture, they actually become what we call toxic. And that's where people, that's really bad for the employee, and it's really bad for the organization as well. So when we think about culture, I mean, it's not about just the ping pong tables or the potluck suppers, not against potluck suppers at all, love potluck suppers, just saying. But I think it's also just a place for how you can create the habits, which are created through systems that empower people, that make them feel empowered and also aligned in their direction.
That's awesome. So empowerment and alignment. When I think of alignment, I think of really just being a fit for the organization, and that is really important, because when a person is not when they're not a fit for the organization, then they just have no sense of purpose in that job, and that could create a whole level of toxicity within the organization. So I really like that, Don. Thank you.
Sure.
And the next question is from registration. And any one of you could answer this. It's what are your best employment strategies?
When you say employment strategies, like help me out a little bit. Like maybe can we expand on that a little bit?
Employment strategies, like what are your biggest when I saw this question coming in the registration, what I got from it was really what is it that you do that makes that helps you guarantee that you're hiring the best person possible for the job? That was how I interpreted that question.
I kind of have an answer. Oh, go ahead, Robin.
Oh, sorry, Sarah. Oh, I was just going to say one thing as a nonprofit that we look for is that values align. I think that's one of the most important things. Is we'll get several applicants that have the same skill set and similar experiences, but we're looking for people whose values align with our values, so that their motivation and their passions and what pushes and drives them every day aligns with ours, and then that makes culture.
Well, values. That's great.
Okay, one of the things I would say about that is when you talk about employment, it's important to remember that employment continues after they're employed.
Right.
So what I tell people all the time is, I don't care how good your candidate is, you need to be onboarding, you need to be indoctrinating them to whatever culture you have, and you need to understand that your recruiting never stops. So the best employment strategy is the one that continues after they're hired.
You're absolutely right, Randy. And that's exactly what I was going to say, is transparency in the hiring process. And so having those real conversations with candidates and really telling them, hey, I'm interviewing you and I'm evaluating if you're a good fit for my organization, but you need to be evaluating me as well in this process. Here's what to expect. Here's who we are. And you're really having that open conversation from the start and continuing that, as Randy said, throughout the employment relationship.
I love that. Did you know 77% of potential employees will talk to somebody who already works for the company that they're applying to find out what it's going to be like to work there?
Yeah.
So, like, if you want to attract great employees, be a really great place to work.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And the next question is for you, Dr. Wood. What is your recommendation to a college senior looking to get their first job after graduation, and how early should they start looking at employers of interest?
Thanks, Rachel. And I do want to recognize that our Director of Career Services at Missouri State's on the call, Kelly Rapp, and I appreciate all the work that she does, and she's been instrumental in helping other faculty and staff across campus be prepared and be able to advise their students in this way. So my first answer to this question is, to be honest, most of the students that we have at Missouri State are already working, but they're looking for advancement. They're looking for that next place to go. So I'm going to address this related to, for students who want to move from their current job to something within their field or something that's full-time for them. So really, in the best of situations, college students would have an internship and or volunteering in their sophomore and junior years. Usually an internship in their junior year, and then a second internship in their senior year. Those two things really help them start networking and building their resume. So that's what I tell students. This isn't about, we've got to get out of the mindset of just what are you going to do in your last year to get a job. It's part of college is that whole stair step towards it, so that by the time you're at the end, you have this amazing resume and people can't wait to hire you. But that's the best of situations. People are working, it's hard to put time towards that. Sometimes if you're working, you can't dedicate your full time to an internship. So, you know, those are the types of things that I find that students who get the best job offers is because they have that experience from an internship or volunteering that gives them that competitive edge. And along with that, I would say, no matter what your situation, if you can't get that internship and you're having a hard time balancing all those demands, you got to be registered with your career center very early, no later than your junior year, and really working with a career counselor in those last couple of years. You know, we have an amazing online service now called Handshake through Missouri State. And it really provides great job search strategy assistance, job listings, and other resources like how to find work in COVID-19 situations. And so I recommend students are obviously connecting with their career center. And then also you got to do all the career fairs that we offer, whether it's through Missouri State or through the Career Center here in Springfield. You got to get in there, shake hands with people, see the organizations that are represented, talk to them about their options, and get a better sense of what's available out there. You can't go into a job search and not know what's available.
Right.
So that's really, for me, those are the steps, you know. And then lastly, so this is the third thing, my last point. You got to give yourself at least an hour a week in that senior year to work on professional development. Whether it's an hour of online job searching and applying, working on your resume, doing interviews with people, attending career fairs, sending applications, minimum an hour a week. And I tell my students to schedule that time in your calendar and don't break that date with yourself, because that's what's going to get you to being most prepared to talk to people when they want to call you about a job, and that you're at your best space possible. So those are the three things. Work with your career center at your university, start early with internships, and then use that senior year to really be in that mode of professional development to get that job.
That's awesome. Thanks, Dr. Wood. And the next question is from registration. Should job seekers be looking to connect with the referral at their organization of interest, and how should they network and connect with the referral? And I think Don kind of touched on this a little bit whenever he said that, you know, about 77% of people are already inquiring about the organization. Would anyone like to answer this question?
Well, one of the things I've worked when I work with students, and I do some adjunct instructing in addition to working with organizations. One of the things I always tell students is every time you see somebody new, you have an absolute opportunity to create a positive first impression. And then we go through the first impressions and we talk about how long does it take to get a first impression? 3 to 5 seconds. How long does it take to change a first impression? And most people say a lifetime, but we won't get into that. But it's important to remember that the more you understand about the workplace and the culture you're heading into, the more likely you are to be a fit or to be successful in that workplace. I'll let somebody else build off that if they'd like.
I'll just jump in really quick and say one of the things I hear from students is they're so worried about using their connections because they feel like it's a cheat to getting a job, you know, and it's so hard to break some students of that perception, but that it is really important to help them understand that that's part of networking. And you may get a foot in the door with that contact, but it's you who make the positive impression, as Randy said, and to keep that foot in the door to let you in.
Oh, we can't hear you, Randy.
There we go. I want to say one more thing about that. If you do this and you go out and you network with people, follow up. that is the biggest thing that I hear. I had students that were, when I was doing adjunct instructing at Evangel last year, that would go to job fairs. Oh, I met this fabulous person and we had this great conversation. When did you follow up? Follow up? I sent them an email. No, 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 no. Connect with people. It's okay.
Yeah.
Even in COVID.
I think too, I'd add to that, like from the students that I've interacted with through quite a bit, your mindset has to be on the right spot. I like that Dr. Wood shared, like the don't be afraid to do it, like you're not cheating, or you are cheating. Okay, you're cheating, it's allowed, do it. Like, that's great. Like, go get the job. But whenever you go to network with people and you talk to them, I used to go to a networking event at the chamber every month. And I got into a habit of, instead of meeting somebody and saying, hi, my name is Don Harkey and I work for People-Centered Consulting Group, and let me tell you all the things that we do and maybe you'll buy something from me, so that they could get out of their mouth, here's all the things that I do so you can buy it from me. Instead of doing that, I would just shut up and listen and then look for opportunities where I could help the other person. I think that is a much better, like, just general networking event. I see a lot of students, sometimes they'll come to you and say, hey, I'm graduating, do you think you'd hire me? And I'm usually just, I'm pretty straightforward. I just say, no. But I did one talk at Missouri State years ago, and one student came up to me afterwards and she said, can I ask you a question? What's one of the biggest challenges you have in your business? And I talked a little bit about social media and some of the challenges that we have in terms of integrating that marketing. And she came back and called me a week later and she said, can I come by your office sometime? And I said, yeah. She came by my office with a social media plan all written out. Yeah, of course I hired her. Duh. I mean, like,
That's awesome.
so that's the way you want to approach it.
Yes. And
I
something
also
else.
think that,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it needs to be authentic as well, too.
Right.
I was the same way in my 20s. I thought that it was cheating, and I felt guilty for social networking or professional networking and taking advantage of that in any way. But it's a two-way street. It's helping each other. And I've learned that I've made my best friends through professional networking. And I've met incredible HR resources that know more about one subject or another subject than I do, and then I might know something more about another subject that I can help them with, and it's a mutual helping each other and assisting each other, and it's authenticity. It's building authentic relationships too.
Yes. And another aspect that I personally have found, because I mean, the reason that I do this is because I coach a lot of clients that are trying to get jobs. And a lot of times I've recommended to them, you may not have an opportunity to be at a physical networking event, but be on a place like LinkedIn. It's a professional networking platform. And if you are considering a job with an organization, go on LinkedIn and see if you can find someone with that organization that will be, you reach out to them, introduce yourself, ask them if they'll be willing to share, what they do with the company with you, and sort of just ask to learn about them, and then find an opportunity to share your heart with them and let them know what you're considering and your interest in working for the same organization, and sort of just pick their brain. And people love it when you call them or when you email them or send them a message and ask them to share with you, and not just, you're not just right off the bat asking for something. And so that's just something else that I was thinking about as I saw that question. And we're going to go on to the next one, and this one is for you, Randy. How would you describe an effective and safe team, and should a job seeker research to find out about the team or leader that they are looking to work with?
Well, the easy way to answer that is absolutely, positively, you should research the team. You should research the leader. Because one of the things that I always talk about is most times an effective and safe team reflect the abilities of the leader. I'm a firm believer that a team leader needs to be authentic, they need to be self-aware, and they need to be flexible. What do I mean by that? Well, to lead an effective and safe team, you need to be authentic. You need to be who you are. You need to walk your talk, okay? The second piece is you need people who are self-aware. They understand their strengths and weaknesses, and they value others in the group who make up for their weaknesses. They're not threatened by people. And the third piece I talk about is flexibility, because if anything COVID has taught us in the last 4 months, things can change in an instant. And one of the things that I find when I work with leaders and I work with organizations is that so often leaders get caught up in doing things the way we've always done them. The other thing they get caught up in is they get caught up in that person that drives them the craziest, who probably has the opposite behavior style. Instead of valuing their input, they look at them and see them as an annoyance or a hindrance or somebody we want to get rid of. So I think that one of the things I would tell you is absolutely research it, and there's all kinds of cool things you can do it with. I tell all my students, get on Glassdoor. Everybody know what Glassdoor is? You know, I remember I was working with a group at Jack Henry, and we were talking about hiring. And I told them one day, they said they're getting ready for the interview, and I told them what their interview process was and what questions they ask. And they go, "Where'd you get that?" And I went, "Glassdoor." So that's an example of what I'm talking about. With the internet, with the networking, with all the things that we have so many potential resources, so that you don't do what happened to me one time when I hired into an organization, and 2 weeks after I was there, I went, "Oh, this was a mistake." And we've all had those aha moments. Anyway, I'll be quiet and let anybody else in the team chime in or add to that.
That's great. That's great, Randy. Thank you. Yeah, it's really important to know, to just research and find out about organizations, and really just it does help with strategically positioning yourself, you know, to successfully get that job, and also know what you're walking into. It's really important. And the next question is also from registration. What question or questions should a candidate be asking during an interview? Who wants to take this one?
Well, I know one I always ask. Ask why the last person in the job either wasn't successful or why they left. I mean, they don't always give you an honest answer, but at least you get an idea of what's going on.
That's good. I like that.
I've had some candidates ask me a few really good questions that stuck out. Of course, what does success look like in this position? They're really wanting to know, how can I be successful? What does that look like for you? What's your definition of success in this role? And it shows that they care and they want to meet that. I've also been asked, what do you like best about working at this organization? And I enjoy that one as well. That one's a fun one to answer because I love where I work. So
that's awesome. Any other thoughts on questions that a candidate should be asking? Okay, we're going to go on to the next
really quick,
one.
you could ask the person that's interviewing you, why did they take that? What was the first job they took at the organization, and where do they see themselves going next is another one that I think is good to ask, so you get a sense of another person's journey through the organization.
Right. That's great. Thank you. And this one's for you, Sarah. So the question says, what is the most important step when applying to a new job? And so what we did with this question was we did a poll on LinkedIn and Facebook. And so we wanted to see what everyone else out there would say. And so we had about 50% who said that company research was really important. And then we had 40% say that finding a referral was important. And then the rest of, I mean, we had a 10% on the resume building, but that was about it. So it looks like people like company research and finding a referral, and I'll let you take this, Sarah.
Yeah, both of those are very important, and it's going to depend on which organization or who's answering or what type of hiring manager. We all have kind of different opinions on that, and they're all important, to be honest, but as far as most important, the company research, as we've talked about earlier, you have to know what organization that you're applying for, and so that's vital and foundational, but a referral is really powerful as well. You know, employers know that a current employee is not going to put their neck on the line for somebody who is not a high quality candidate. So my biggest thing is I would advise you know yourself, know your skills, your abilities and talents, and know what you really want, and then go for it. Don't just apply to anything. Be very selective and try to find a position that will allow you to shine. You always want to look for great companies and a team that you want to be a part of, and do that research, gather as much information as you can, but then try to find contacts and have exposure to that organization that can give you additional insight. And that will really set you up for success when you're looking to apply to a job.
That's awesome. I was looking at a study on, I believe it was on LinkedIn, and it was talking about how that now employers that more and more employers are beginning to take advantage of the employee referral programs, because they're starting to find that the retention rate of employees is increasing and turnover rates are decreasing. And so employers are starting to really find that, employer referral programs are a valuable aspect to ensuring that employees they're loyal to the company, they're high quality employees, and those types of things. And yes, we can't stress enough company research and how important that is as well. And we've got a question from registration. How should a candidate handle objections that might come up during an interview?
Did you see this as objections from the
interviewer?
Or the interviewer, that they have an objection with a portion of your resume, or?
They didn't really say, it just said, how should a candidate handle objections that might come up during an interview? And so when I read that, I was like, well, maybe, maybe they asked a question and the interviewee responded, and maybe the person interviewing wasn't really okay with it, or had an objection to something that was said. I'm not really sure.
Well, that is a tough one, but I think, you ought to, just like any difficult question, you got to turn a negative into a positive, and be prepared to explain and talk through what your reasoning was with that, and to say, well, that might be an area that I have less experience in. It's something I'm interested to learn about more, or I've had a similar experience, but that's an area that I have for growth. So I think you can always have that opportunity to turn something that might appear negative into a positive, or an area for growth.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to also share one of the things I teach everybody who does an interview is the question you should ask in every interview is, if you really want this job, what prevents you from hiring me? I mean, that's a question that if you know what's going through the interviewer's head, you at least have an opportunity to address it before you walk away. And I think too often we walk away and we fret about the interview and we think it went this way and we think it went that way. But I think it's important for us as candidates to understand it's up to us to address any questions or any comments that that person sitting across from us has.
That's great.
It's an interesting situation, because I don't think it's going to happen a lot. Arguing and telling you why they're not going to hire you in the interview is not going very well, or they're testing you probably. It makes me think, though, a little bit of there's a sales technique. If there's If you're selling to somebody and they're telling you why they're not going to buy your product, you can go back to them and you can start to say, no, the points that you said are wrong, and you can fight them and it's over, right? So
I would agree with that.
the sales technique is to kind of roll with it and say, you know, you might be right. You have a great point on a perspective, and you almost like lean into what they're saying a little bit more, of saying, you're right, I might not be a great fit for this position. I'm just glad to get the opportunity to talk through this and to figure this out with you. Because then the other people are going to kind of lean into it and go like, well, wait a minute, I'm not completely there yet. And now you're kind of back on track.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Or throw something at them. That's the other tip.
Yeah. Thanks, Don. And the next question is for you, Robin. What is your organization doing to foster a work culture that is aligned with your values?
Sorry, I got to get my unmute there. Our organization is definitely promoting our values through almost everything that we do. They're included in our hiring process and just our daily procedures and processes, even why we do what we do on a daily basis when we meet, when we start possibly like a new program or an incentive program or a safety program, or anything that we launch with our staff. Our values are part of it. And they're also part of our discipline process. They're in our employee personnel policy. Our values are in there. If our values are broken, that's part of our policy, is that you have to live out our values. And they have a great impact on our work culture and how we treat one another as people and fellow co-workers.
That's great. That's great. And the next question is from registration. Are there any challenges or differences in recruiting online versus in person with COVID-19? And what are your recruitment strategies during this time?
I can speak a little bit to that, as I just the last 2 days interviewed 4 different people on Zoom for a position, a pretty key position in our organization, and we did it on Zoom. One thing that I go back to is, I know Don could correct me on this, but communication is like, what is it? How much % verbal and the rest is nonverbal? It's facial expressions, it's body language, how you're sitting. And Zoom is limited, even though you can see their facial expressions, it's still very limited to their reactions, and how it creates a little bit of a challenge in that you're not with the person, you're not getting that feel that in person. That so much of hiring, I think, is really gut, especially when you are aiming and your goal is to not just hear their values, but feel their values come through in how they answer their questions and the examples they give and the stories that they share, about their experiences.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. The visual is really important. I think it is really important. I think at some point that you can see the nonverbals and things. I also think, by the way, in the interview process, it's kind of related to here. I think a lot of hiring folks make the mistake of thinking the hiring process needs to go really cleanly and pleasantly. And I think that when we try to hire somebody, we try to actually create some moments that are a little bit uncomfortable and don't go as well as it's supposed to, because you really learn a lot about the other person that way. So like we interviewed a sales director for a company last week, and about 3/4 way through the interview, I just said, well, I just don't know. What would you say if I just told you I just don't think you're a good fit for this candidate, for this position? And it's a sales director position. If that scares them off, they're not going to be a good sales director. Like, it's trying to create like a little bit of tension on it. And we did it visually because I wanted to see the person's reaction. This candidate was a good candidate because you could see that it ticked her. You could see her reaction, like it ticked her off. You could see the competitiveness kick in, which is exactly what we're looking for. Like I wanted you to be like, what do you mean I'm terrible? Almost, fight me. Let's do this. That's a sales director. That's what I want. So watching the visuals, I think, is really important, Robin. I like that.
And I'll add too, we have to be careful as hiring professionals to be aware of our biases, our implicit biases, because, you know, as teaching communication like I did for so many years, there's a communication style that I really prefer. In fact, I see some of the students nodding occasionally, and I love nodders because they give you so much confirmation. But not everybody does that. And a nod on Zoom gives you a quick, you know, confirmation. But if somebody's not nodding, that doesn't mean they're not paying attention and really connecting with you. So, you know, we have to be careful with Zoom because there are some real limitations with it. So for you as an interviewee, the students and others looking for work who are on here, you have to be a real chameleon. You know, find places where you demonstrate positivity and awareness and you know, immediacy, like you're trying to make connections. But at the other times, you may have to do what like Dawn just talked about, which is really challenge yourself to get out of what you're normally comfortable doing and show a side of you that's the tenacious one or the thinking one, that sort of strategy that you probably have that it's hard to see on Zoom. You're going to have to express it. Because we really do all have our biases, and Zoom can really amplify those. So, you know, it's pretty complex. I hear Robin, you know, that's the Zoom. We've done a lot of Zoom interviews in higher ed, and the technology can sometimes really work against you. I mean, everybody's had a really good connection tonight, but the worst thing is when you're talking and nothing's being heard on the other side. And then all of a sudden it catches up to you and they're like, should I say something? And oh, just the worst. So we all have to have grace with the technology.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you, guys. And this next one is for you, Dawn. How often do organizations need to review job descriptions for subsequent postings?
That's a great question. You know, it's funny because most organizations have job descriptions. A lot of them don't use them. So they'll have them in a file someplace and it's like, okay, do you have job descriptions? Yeah, we do. They're back here. If you have those, you never use them for your employees, then never update them because it's just a waste of time. If you're not going to use them, then don't spend any time on them. We know that it is absolutely critical for culture in an organization that people clearly understand what their role is, very clearly understand it. And it can't be one of those 20-page job descriptions that ends and other duties as assigned. We love to see job descriptions that have a job mission statement. It's a great exercise that every single person has a one-sentence statement of what success in their job looks like. I don't see that used very often. I think it's incredibly powerful and a difficult exercise to do for an organization. We also see sometimes organizations get trapped in we've done that and we just keep replacing parts of the machine, and then you put a person into it and it's a different type of a person, and then the machine grows and now you're just like, well, attack onto this over here because we need some attack onto this over here. We like to think a lot that organizations, especially after you've grown a lot or shrunk a lot or changed a lot, you need to take a step back and just look at the design of the organization and look through it. We're working with an organization right now, and they kept saying, wait, we have just a terrible lack of accountability in this one area, lack of accountability. People get away with a lot of stuff, and they kept pointing to this one area. And we just looked at the org chart and we found out that this one supervisor has 65 direct reports. Okay, there's the problem right there. Like that just isn't going to work. So I think that frequently organizations, if they're not changing that quickly and you haven't had a lot of turnover, then you don't have to look at it as much. I think that though the employee should have the job description in front of them all the time, and that should be part of the development process, the check-in process, review process. And then I think organizations, especially as they're changing, need to take a step back and look at themselves and how they're designed, and sometimes redesign and think about how things are laid out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I personally remember a time when I looked at a job online. This was many years ago, and I'd reached out to the hiring person. I did my research and found out who it was, and I asked if she would be willing to tell me a little bit more about the job, because I'd started to figure that a lot of times hiring managers don't update the job description. And so you don't really know what they're looking for, even though the job description says one thing. And sure enough, when I finally met with this lady, she had a really important piece to that job that she was looking for, and I didn't have that background. And she said, I absolutely need this. And I said, well, that's not me. And so we both agreed that that job wasn't the right fit for me. But then it was evident that she needed to go back to that job posting and update it. And I was glad I didn't apply before going to discuss the job opportunity with the director.
Well, let's be really real about it. I think that I'm going to say most, I'll be a little controversial here. I think most hiring managers don't know what they want themselves from that position, not clear about it. I see some heads nodding there. That's disturbing. That's kind of weird, especially for the students that are on the call. You're like, wait, they don't know what they're looking for? No, they're doing their job. They're just doing the day-to-day stuff. And whenever you go to hire, a lot of times it's something else that you have to do on top of existing things. And so they haven't really taken a step back to think about it. So that job description is, as much as anything, an internal exercise too, just to say, like, I need to really think about what success in this position really looks like, so that it's really clear when they come on. Because it ties back to what Randy said earlier too. If you don't have that, then you don't have good expectations, and then they're not onboarded correctly, and then they don't have a good experience there, and then you're gonna have trouble filling the next position. It all falls into place. If I can come in, it's crystal clear about what winning looks like. And if I can come in and on the first day of my job, Rachel hires me to come in, and she sits down with me. She says, Don, let me tell you why we hired you and why you're going to be a rock star in this position. It sits down with that job description and where it fits into the company, and then shows me the values and vision of the company and how that all connects together and why the company's excited to have me. It's game on for me. Like, I'm ready to do that.
Yeah. That's awesome. And Dr. Wood, how important is college internship in comparison to volunteering while in college?
All right, I'm going to straddle the fence here, because I'm going to say both are valuable, but for different reasons. I mentioned earlier about our students at Missouri State work a lot, so it can be hard to do both. So in some cases, a volunteering situation may be a better fit for some students versus an internship, because a student who's already working is not able necessarily to take an unpaid internship, which many are. And so I think both are important. I tell students, start out by volunteering with your student organization, a non-for-profit that you're really passionate about, even job shadowing that can be on a short-term basis. It's all about learning the ropes, meeting people, and kind of soaking in the experience, and let yourself kind of expand that perspective as you see people work. Offering help as a volunteer about what are your strengths, what are you seeing, so offering help while also improving your own skills. So the volunteering, I think, then can lend you to being able to apply for an internship, because you've developed a few more skills and observational skills and awareness that make you, I think, a more valuable intern. So really, no matter the path, I think both volunteering and internships are very valuable and important. You just have to figure out which one's going to fit best for your life situation. But no matter the path, you've got to document your work accomplishments as you're doing them. Any certifications that you got during that internship or that volunteering, skills that you gained, how did you add value to the organization, and really documenting that, putting it on your resume. And that's why I said going back to the Career Center, because they can really help you imagine that. One of the things I'd like to share with Rachel is a nice worksheet that our Career Center offers, which is a set of competencies on one side, things like digital technology and communication skills, team building. And then on the right, where did you get those experiences? Things like classes, internships, volunteering, campus jobs, or that you don't have that skill yet. And so it's a way to match where did I get these experiences and what are the things that I can do well? So, because you want to end up at the end of your time at Missouri State or whatever school you're in with all those boxes checked, or as many of them as possible. So it's a great visual practice, and I'm going to share that with Rachel so she can send it out.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Some of that too is exploring what you want to do, right? Because I know, I mean, a lot of college students, when I speak to even seniors graduating, they're like secretly saying like, I still don't know what I really want to do or what I'm looking for, right? Some of those volunteer experiences can open up, because when I graduated, I was in engineering and I went to work for engineering for 10 years. Some of the volunteer things and side things that I did helped me to point to like, maybe there's a different path in my career. There's things that I can do that most engineers don't like doing that is odd. What else could I do? Maybe that's an insight that I can use.
Yeah, and the volunteering can really illuminate your passions. So you might find that you want to do something that's related to increasing voter turnout, or working with animals, or working with young children. And then it might just really open up for you skills that you didn't realize you have, or passions that you have, and then you can start to talk to the people that you're volunteering with and to say, how can I turn this into something where I can get paid for it, you know, and to really get you to expand those networks that sometimes I feel like students just see volunteering as it's my duty to volunteer, especially as a public affairs university, and we have students volunteer and engage with the community and seeing it as a checkoff, but it's really about developing your skills and connecting with your community.
That's awesome. And Randy, this one's for you. 2 questions. What is the impact of written disciplinary actions on employees' ability to function? And then what are important components of a verbal warning, and how many should organizations give before an actual write-up?
Well, many years ago when I was starting out, I had a gentleman share with me something he called the rule of 3. And it's both for successes and failures. And it's like the first time you do things, it's a mistake. Second time, it's a trend. The third time, it's a habit. And one of the things that I try to recognize, especially with my leaders that I coach and teach, is to understand that your behavior with an employee who's going through written disciplinary actions is different in those 3 aspects. So one of the things I talk about, and I didn't get this wasn't mine, got this from the Franklin Covey organization, is I always call it Dr. Cracking It. So in other words, every time you sit down and you have a conversation with an employee about something going on, you lay out the desired results, guidelines, resources, accountability, consequences. And from there, you get that written agreement or that verbal agreement, however it is. And so if it doesn't mess up, if they mess up the second time, then what you're trying to do is you're going, okay, well, how do we mess up this agreement? What did I do? What can I do better? What do you need? But the third piece is when we get to that, it's like, okay, now we're at this position where this has to change, or we're going to have to make some changes, period. And so one of the things I tell people is nobody likes this stuff, whether you're the one evaluating or you're the one getting the evaluation. But unfortunately, how can you ever expect someone to be successful if they don't know what success is supposed to be? And I think too many leaders abdicate from this responsibility in an effort to either quote unquote be nice or to be like I said, to get them to follow them or this or that or the other. Here's the thing. The whole concept of leadership is to get people to do things that they wouldn't do on their own. That's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to take them to a different place. You're trying to teach them things. So one of the things I always tell people is that when you do this, you recognize that the person across from you is going to, it's not an easy situation for them either. So thank you, by the way, for giving me the toughest question in this whole grouping. But that's kind of how I handle it. And I found that if you have a rule of 7, you're spending a lot of your time working with those employees. Rule of three has always been a way for me to kind of say, okay, this has to fix, and we handle it relatively quickly rather than just dragging it on.
Right, right.
Randy, could you repeat those three ones? You talked about resources. So after you've talking with somebody, you talked about resources, accountability, and then?
It's desired results. In other words, what is it you want people
Right.
to do? The guidelines, what kind of things, where can they operate? How do they operate within? What resources are available? So in other words, how often do you need to come to me as the leader and get the things that you need? Or maybe you can spend a certain amount, or you've got this. Who are you accountable to? That's the next one. And finally, that last one, consequences. I always talk about both the positive and the negative consequences. I mean, I don't like to couch it as negative. I always like to try to, I'm a firm believer in what I call appreciative inquiry. I always talk about anytime we do things, it's like, what are we doing well? And what could we improve? Because everybody knows that when we go down the negative path, that's where we stay. So, but I will say that when I get to step 3, I'm probably not as worried about being so positive, if that makes any sense. Does that help?
Yes. Yes. So it is 6:51, and I was really wanting us to stay on time. I wanted to check in with the chat. I believe we have some questions in the chat, or maybe comments. Stephanie, are you on?
And it looks like we only had Kelly had shared a thank you to Dr. Wood, and then Gordon had shared when we were talking about questions you could ask to in your interview to the interviewer. He suggested what reservations, if any, do they have about hiring you, which I think we covered that later in the conversation.
Okay.
And then Gordon just sent in another one. It says, how do you as interviewers determine and measure a potential employee's motivation for the job? And are you usually open to suggestions for job design, looking at in order to improve a potential employee's motivation? Great question.
Wow.
Anyone interested in taking that one?
I really like that question. It's a great question. I think the second question, are you usually open to suggestions for job design? Certainly, yes. In the interview, maybe a little bit less so. Like, don't go too far ahead, right? Don't go in the first interview and start to talk about, well, I've got some suggestions on how we can change this job, and it's kind of like, whoa, we're just talking here. Let's so be careful of where you are in that relationship, in that discussion. But I think most good companies know that they're going to customize the job a little bit towards the employee, as long as the objectives are still met at the end of the day. So I think that's a good one. And then in terms of determining, like, measuring employees' motivation for the job, I think some of it is you pick it up by the way that somebody interviews, by the passion that they have. My favorite question is, what questions do you have for me? And you pick up a lot. I learned a lot from that. That's my. I almost hate to even start to, I'll ask a couple of questions, and a lot of times in an interview, I'll just say, what questions do you have for me? And if the other person's like, I really don't have any questions for you. And I don't have any questions for you either, and we don't have to waste each other's time now. Thank you. That's great. If it's, I've been really thinking about, like, what you do and you explore this, and I'm really interested about this and what your company does and this, and I was looking at this on the website and stuff, you can, I mean, boy, you're fired up about the job. It's pretty easy to tell, I think.
That's awesome. Thanks, Don. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next question for Sarah.
We have one more question that came through from Samantha Barrett.
Okay.
How do you approach potential employers about bringing a service dog, needing a service dog in the workplace?
Okay. Anyone interested in?
You've got to enlist the help of human resources in that. Get your favorite connection in human resources that deals with accommodations, and get them into the conversation. That would be my You know, I as a potential employee would be to say, what are your guidelines and policies about accommodations? I think you would want to start with accommodations first and then lead into that next step as you go.
Yes. And Sarah, it looks like we might have touched on this question already. You know, we've sort of touched on it, so I don't know. Do you have any any thoughts on it, or?
Yeah, I was going to say we have covered this topic quickly. Of course, research is very important. You're looking at company culture, brand, image in the community. I Google a company all the time and try to find all of the reviews from past and current employees. When you do that, keep in mind that even the best companies will have a few bad reviews. That's inevitable. But pay attention to how they respond to those negative reviews. It really does say a lot about the organization. You know, research how long they've been around, their growth pattern, general market resilience, expected future growth. All of these things are very important. Even just their company website, mission, vision, guiding principles. These are things that you can research ahead of time. And if they're not readily available, these are questions you can ask in the interview process.
Thank you, Sarah. And next question is for Robin. Does length of time with previous company matter, and how might this affect a job seeker's chances?
Matter. How does it matter? I'm a big believer in what experience that you share and how it shows me where you've been and where you're going. So if it's progressive, the time length doesn't necessarily matter to me. And other times it can. So it's kind of a subjective question that is very dependent upon what I call it kind of the story of what it's telling of your career up to this point and where you're wanting to go. I like to see progressive growth in job history, and how, you know, so how long they've been at a company doesn't necessarily tell things. I'm very open to, there's different reasons why people leave different companies. Maybe they're not challenged, or they're bored, or they've done what they've needed to do at, you know, they've completed and accomplished what they've needed to accomplish, and it's time to move on. So I really like to see something that is very relevant on their resume and that basically tells a story of what they've accomplished. They need to be specific. You know, what have they accomplished at each company? Even if it's something as simple as, you know, going back to talking about like volunteering and students that just have interning and volunteering on their resume, you know, have you maybe completed an entire organizational filing system, for example? Something that just a project that you've done from beginning to end that's shown that you've accomplished something that has made an improvement at the company that you were with. I also like to look for things in job histories that show that they're paying attention to the job description. It has to be applicable. So even, I'll even look for keywords that stand out. So to me, it's not necessarily the length of time, but it's what story they're telling, what their history is portraying for their, to me, it's got to show growth. It's got to show growth. It's got to show passion. It's got to show motivation, that they're excited and they're passionate and they want to make a difference somewhere. And this is the next step.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. So we're going to move on. I don't know that we're able to take any more questions, but do we have any more chat questions? And if we don't, we're actually right at 7 o'clock. And so I would like to go over the resources and close out. But Stephanie, do we have any more questions?
We don't have any questions that came through the chat unless there's some that people are anxiously waiting to ask. So.
Okay, so do we have any, do you guys have any questions? Okay. So it looks like we did a great job. And so I'm not going to go over additional questions. These were just questions that we had in case we had more time, and we do not have any more time. So we're going to go past this. And so the resources, Guarantee Bank, aka SARA, is actually with Guarantee Bank, and they've got some current openings. And so if there's anything there that jumps at you, what I'm going to do is I will actually send a link to this video to every one of you. And so if you find anything on there that you're interested in, Sarah's information is on the slide. And John's with People Centric. If you need any kind of consulting with them, the website is also on there. It's peoplecentric.com. And then I went ahead and put Cox Health on there because I work for Cox Health, and I absolutely love my job, and we are always hiring. So if you find anything on Cox Health that you're interested in, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I'll be happy to connect you with whoever it is that's hiring. And then the Missouri Job Center has a virtual job fair that's coming up on October 5th. And so I asked them if they'll be okay with me sharing this with you guys, and they were really excited to have me share it with you guys. And so definitely take advantage of that. And then there's a list of open positions on LinkedIn, and it gets updated. It's actually LinkedIn, Andrew Seaman, he's an editor with LinkedIn, and so he's constantly posting open positions on LinkedIn, and I encourage you guys to take advantage of it. I will also include the link in my email, but he's constantly updating this, and it's a valuable tool. It's a place for you to go and find what's out there and what's available for you to pursue. And then also, Randy has a book that he wrote. It's called "If I Knew Then What I Know Now." So I wanted to share that with you guys. And he also has services that he's able to offer if you're interested. And then I have, this was actually open all of July. So you guys are like right at the end of this, but I do currently am offering 70% off of my coaching programs. You can find out more on my website, and that's actually closing tomorrow. But yeah, check that out, and definitely sign up if you find it valuable. And if you want to stay updated on future Discovery Dinners, definitely follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at discovery.dinner. And if you have any questions, feel free to email. The email's right there. It's long. And save the date. The next Discovery Dinner is going to be October the 29th, Thursday, October 29th. So save the date on that one, and there will be posts on the social media pages, and you hear more about it, but save the date. And that's all I have got.
Rachel, can I say one thing?
Yes.
You said my book is published. It's publishing in September. Please.
Yes.
Okay. I've got some re-editing to do real quick before I publish. But thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much. It's been a great 1 hour. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email. I will send an email with everything that we've covered tonight and the links and everything that Dr. Wood has to share. So definitely keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting, Rachel.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a wonderful
Bye.
evening. Bye.